Sense the anticipation in this crowd. It'll be hard to find an empty seat. Chris Noe against Warner Kruger. Again, Johns Hopkins, you pointed out, in the dark jerseys, and right away, Ryan Kuzma helps win it for the Hopkins Blue Jays, and the Blue Jays quickly come on the attack. An opportunity here blocked in close by the close defenseman for the Maryland Terrapins. And Hopkins now, Andrew Godfrey, he will set the offense up, but the Hopkins Blue Jays trying to quickly get one off the faceoff.
You can see the impact that Kruger has on that faceoff unit. He's banged up. We'll see how he wears as this game goes on. He's got a shoulder, he's got an ankle, and he's got a finger problem.
In fact, he actually took the shot, and Mike Bonanni was there, the close defenseman for the Maryland Terrapins. Andrew Godfrey now. Billy Evans for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. First quarter of play here from Homewood Field. We are just underway. Dave Johnson along with Quint Kessnick. Andrew Godfrey. What about tempo in this afternoon's game? What should we be looking for there?
I think Hopkins wants a single-digit ball game. 9-8, 8-7, real low scoring. Maryland wants to score about 12, 13 goals. So Hopkins can be very deliberate with the ball. They're going to look for their matchups. They want to isolate against the short stick defenders. You'll see a lot of inverting from behind the cage and a lot of patience.
Billy Evans took that shot and then paid the price afterwards. It took a bounce on the AstroTurf here at Homewood Field. Hopkins had it covered behind the cage. Now Billy Evans has got a 9-game goal-scoring streak going right now for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. So as you pointed out, Hopkins very patient. Billy Evans, good defense on the part of Maryland. Paul Ulfstrom back there, the close defenseman for the Maryland Terrapins with the big stick. Trying to deny Billy Evans of the feed. They're trying to get it out front to Dave Marr. Marr was closed off well by Mike Bonanni.
Bonanni's got excellent feet.
So Bonanni did a nice job to really shield Dave Marr as Billy Evans was trying to get it to Dave Marr. Marr now pleading with the official.
Yeah, Marr saying that that ball went off Bonanni. And he's not letting up on the far side. He better watch himself. Bonanni's just got great athletic ability. They switched him from a midfield position to a long stick. He doesn't handle the stick particularly well, but he's just such a solid fundamental defenseman. Brian
Doherty, the goalie for the Maryland Terrapins. Dave LaChapelle, who scored a goal here at Homewood Field, as we mentioned. And now, the Maryland Terrapins quickly go on the attack. Bill Rule for the Terrapins. Terrapins with their first chance at attack. Behind the cage, Andrew Whipple. They work it left side now. Hopkins, good blanketing defense on the part of Hopkins Blue Jays, and getting tangled up. Frank Radin gets tangled up with the official, and it leads to a turnover for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays and a sea of boos. Now some pressure. Hopkins having trouble on the clear. Mike Crawford helping out for the Maryland Terrapins. The Terrapins quickly coming back and making the save. Jonathan Marcus.
Always nice to get that first save. Hopkins, a sloppy clear. Van Horn just launches that ball into the middle of the field. That's not what you want to do against this Maryland ball club.
Johns Hopkins, though. Dan Evans has to play it back. Aaron Van Horn. And now we have a whistle and a timeout wisely called by Johns Hopkins, as they were going the wrong direction and under time constraints there because they needed to get it into the attack zone.
Yeah, it's not good to burn a timeout so early in the game, but Tony Seaman sensed that they needed to maintain possession there. He uses it early, so they'll maintain possession. Watch the physical intensity of this matchup. Van Horn, Radin decking the official. Radin's extremely quick. You know, he's deceptively quick on AstroTurf compared to turf. This is Evans getting pushed out of bounds by Maryland on the far side. Definitely a physical battle, and if this game becomes a war and more of a wrestling match or a football game, I think that also favors Maryland. They're definitely a tougher group of athletes. Doherty's yet to be tested. This is Frank Radin all alone in front after the turnover, and Marcus is right there, gets down on it and catches it. Anytime a goalie catches the ball, that generally means it wasn't a particularly good shot.
John Marcus will have it for the Hopkins Blue Jays. Can they call the timeout because they were under pressure? Again, they have 10 seconds now to get it up the attack zone, and now trouble for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays on the turnover. Hahn has a chance to go to goal. Hahn trying to flick it behind the back, trying to center at that point because he was closed down. It'll be Hopkins possession. But Gagliardi with a costly turnover, almost costly for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays.
You call timeout to set up your clear, and then you don't execute. It's got to be frustrating if you're Tony Seaman right now. Take a look, Gagliardi turned it over, then made a nice check to get the ball out of Hahn's stick, and Hahn put that behind the back. Here's the original turnover right there. The ball just dropping out of the back of Gagliardi's stick, and Hahn on the loose ball.
Mike Crawford with that pressure there. And Johns Hopkins having trouble working it upfield as Tim Colbert, part of the second midfield unit, was trying to track it down on the left side. So
midfield for Hopkins.
Another turnover for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, and it will go to the Maryland Terrapins. 11:49 left here in the first quarter from Homewood Field in Baltimore, and Johns Hopkins will now have to face the Maryland attack.
Time, Tony. Tony, time.
Maryland Terrapins. Tony DeAndrea. DeAndrea now coming upfield, loses it out of his stick. Now trying to maintain possession, has trouble the far side, is going to be checked out of play, and a flag. A flag immediately thrown as Rob Dorr was over there for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, and they're going to penalize him.
You got to call this one right there on the far side. Take a look at the replay. DeAndrea having trouble controlling the ball. It's going towards the end line, and Dorr just takes a run at him. The Hopkins fan thought that DeAndrea turned. He didn't. DeAndrea's back was to Dorr the entire play. There's Dorr on the sideline being lectured by assistant coach Tommy Roscoe. 30-second foul.
Extra man situation for the Maryland Terrapins. So the Terrapins quickly come on the attack. Will try to create some opportunities. Mario Lapointe is very good on the extra man situations. He is at the top of the restraining area for the Maryland Terrapins. Lapointe with the ball now will take the shot. Sailed off a couple of sticks in traffic. And they're going to say Johns Hopkins possession. I think maybe because it went through traffic.
They might have felt that that was a feed.
Yeah.
Lapointe, transfer out of Essex Community College, played his high school ball at Mount St. Joe, which is here in Baltimore.
Sounded like it did go off a stick, and that's why maybe they did think it was a feed. Now the Hopkins Blue Jays, Milford Marchand. Pass across field again. He had 4 goals last week. This is Adam Bond. Bond for the Hopkins Blue Jays. Actually out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida is Adam Bond. Milford Marchand, 4 goals last week. He goes to work, takes the shot, goes out of his pocket. As good defense by Paul Elstrom for the Maryland Terrapins. And now Hopkins Blue Jays will get another opportunity on the attack. No score here between Johns Hopkins and Maryland. It's very simple. The winner moves on. For the loser, it's a long off season.
Marchand facing the long stick this week. Last week Notre Dame chose to play him with a short stick, and he really exploited it with 4 goals.
John Miller back there for the Maryland Terrapins. Now the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Andrew Godfrey. Challenger by the Maryland Terrapins, Pat McGuire. Dave Marr, the assist master, if you will, for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. He often sets up a lot of the Hopkins attack. Godfrey, McGuire is on him. They've been bothered by a pulled hamstring at Pat McGuire, but in the contest for the Maryland Terrapins and providing the defensive work on number 9 for Johns Hopkins, Andrew Godfrey. Dave Marr, now they get the ball movement going. Dan Dennehan now to Milford Marchand. Marchand wants to take it to goal. Options denied. Behind the cage it goes, and Hopkins will lose it. Dave Marr, under pressure, just throws it out of his stick. He was trying to control it, evade the pressure being put on by, I believe, Pat McGuire was still back there for the Maryland Terrapins.
Yeah, and prior to that, Nemi from Maryland did a fine job against Marchand. Graham Nemi, the senior. 6'3", 192, and he's got good speed. You need it when you're covering Marchand, because Marchand is a scorchingly fast player.
That's a good point, because it looked like he was going to try to go to goal, and he was immediately shielded and denied. Now the Maryland Terrapins. Chris Farmer gets it checked away. Now the battle for the ground ball. Maryland Terrapins try to come up with it in their half of midfield. Bob Hanna. Now Andrew Whipple will settle things down. Bob Hanna on the ball now for the Maryland Terrapins. Hanna looking to create something. Jay Penn working on defense. They bring it back out front, shot, take it in traffic. Now the scramble for the loose ball on the far side. Maryland Terrapins, a good hustle on the part of Bob Hanna to win the ball back. Now Andrew Whipple. Whipple, Kuzma, Brian Kuzma, good defense. Now on the clear, Jay Penn, he's under pressure, double teamed by Maryland. Penn, though, eludes that pressure. Good break now to Dan Evans for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Evans with the feed, but he had a big stick to feed it to. And Todd Carney, and now Maryland in transition. Also up to a big stick, Brian Reese for the Maryland Terrapins. Checked away at midfield as Mike Crawford could not hang on to it, but we have whistles. And a timeout called by the Maryland Terrapins. So Dick Adele calling a timeout for his Terrapin troops as we have seen what we expected.
And in a big game like this, when he makes that save, his teammates get fired up, the crowd gets into it, and it's really a snowball effect.
Well, we saw that actually last week at the Johns Hopkins game. Peter Hillgardner now for Maryland Terrapins. Only DeAndrea now. DeAndrea with a chance. There was stick checked away. It's loose, and Jay Penn comes racing out for it for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. And coming up on the attack, trying to make the feed inside, or cutting Adam Bond. The Maryland Terrapins now trying to clear the big stick for the Terrapin, Paul Elfstrom. Good work on his part, and now the Terrapins. Elfstrom still with the ball, looking for someone to feed it to. Andrew Whipple is definitely the one he wanted. Whipple sets up here on the right side. Maryland Terrapins go to work. Todd Evans. Evans, nice dodge, gets around, takes the shot, and Marcus denies with the save. Maryland Terrapins will have the ball.
Evans is so tough. 13 goals, 1 assist. You know, when he goes to the cage, he's looking to score for himself. He can stop on a dime. That's his ability right there to change directions and then accelerate towards the cage.
Hillgardner had a chance, but it went wide right, so Hopkins will have the ball. Peter Hillgardner, along with that attack of Andrew Whipple and Matt Honda, called the Mad Hatters. A number of hat tricks between them this season for the Maryland Terrapins, but right now it's Hopkins on the offense. Andrew Godfrey. Good work on the part of Graham Niemi for the Maryland Terrapins. He almost came up with the turnover. Milford Marchand now. Marchand. That appears to be a matchup to watch this afternoon. Marchand gets around, comes in close, takes the shot. Graham Niemi and Marchand, though, a matchup to look out for this afternoon. We've seen it early, and Niemi's done a good job for the Maryland Terrapins.
Yeah, he has. He's tough. Marchand has got that change of speed, which makes him so difficult to play. Likes his right hand. Doherty makes his save. Watch it right here. Marchand gets inside position. Niemi goes to the desperation check. Generally, when Marchand shoots left-handed, he's going to be shooting low, and I think Doherty read that real well.
Billy Evans with the ball now to Dave Marr, the playmaker. His brother Scott Marr is an assistant coach for the Maryland Terrapins. And Scott's wife Tracy is pregnant with child, so it's a busy time for the Marr family in general. Billy Evans for the Hopkins Blue Jays. Johns Hopkins in the dark jerseys, Maryland in the white. Maryland the number 2 seed in this tournament. Adam Bond sets up behind the cage. Traffic in front. Bond will come around to take the shot. It's in the net. It's in the net. A goal, Johns Hopkins. Adam Bond. So Adam Bond christens this game. And there was a lot of traffic in front of Brian Doherty.
The key here is Bond is an attackman, but Maryland's choosing to cover him with a midfield defender. Anytime you see that kind of matchup, you got to go to the goal. Bond did. Beautiful bounce shot in the upper corner. You'll get a nice view of it right here. Bond shooting on the run, beating Doherty with the bounce shot. That's a key. Maryland you're only allowed 4 long sticks defensively. You got to choose the right people to cover him, and that time Bond made the Maryland coaching staff pay for that move.
There was Warner Kruger on the faceoff, and Warner Kruger has been so tough this year to beat on faceoffs. Brian Haggerty was taking it for the Maryland Terrapins, but Johns Hopkins, and it'll be Maryland with the possession. As good pressure offered after Hopkins won the faceoff. David Livingston on the ball now. A violation on the clear for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. And Maryland quickly coming back on the attack. Chris Farmer trying to execute the feed. But in his zeal to get things started for Maryland, it'll be Johns Hopkins with possession. So again,
you see some of the early jitters for the Maryland offense. They need to get the ball behind to their ball control guys, Whipple and Hillgardner. And on that second midfield, I think it's real important for them to swing it to the ball control players.
Maybe for the newcomers to lacrosse, you might want to explain the violation we just saw where Hopkins got caught in an over and back type situation.
Yeah, once you take the ball out of the defensive box, you're not allowed back in. It's almost like a half-court violation in basketball.
Edzer Kelly now for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. You'll notice that the rules of lacrosse designed just to keep the game going in the forward direction. Dan Denahan now, very talented attacker, 24 goals this year for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Denahan in the corner. Adam Kelly now for the Hopkins Blue Jays. They lead 1-0. here in the first quarter. Now Dave Marr, he's talented with those feeds. Warner Kruger! Warner Kruger with the goal! Fifth goal of the year for Warner Kruger, and some frustration for Brian Doherty.
Well, Werner Kruger, we talked about his impact that he'd have on faceoffs, but he also is an excellent shooter. Doesn't take many shots, but when he does, he makes them count. Watch David Marr behind the cage, finds his open teammate. Doherty drops his stick there just for a second. Again, it's that overhand motion. Kruger gives him the overhand motion. Watch the head of Brian Doherty's stick. It'll just dip for just a little second, and Kruger puts it over his shoulder.
At 10-13,
Now Brian Haggerty.
You got to credit Marr. Beautiful assist, finding that player all alone on the backside.
Will take the faceoff for the Maryland Terrapins against Warner Kruger. Chris Noe now, going 26 instead of 12 this afternoon against Warner Kruger. Kruger now. He may want more. Dan Denahan with the feed to Andrew Godfrey. Godfrey crossing the restraining line, and now Hopkins gets a chance to set up again in offense. And we mentioned faceoffs in our opening, how important that will be, especially now Hopkins gets out to a 2-0 lead, and you see Hopkins has controlled that department this afternoon.
And especially with the Heat today, you want to control the ball. You want to have that time of possession advantage in your favor.
Godfrey goes to goal. I believe Doherty may have got a foot on that.
Godfrey had Doherty guessing high. You could see the Doc kind of jump up, but he got a toe on it. Kicked it out of bounds.
Dave Marr now for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Marr being worked over by Dave LaChapelle. Now Adam Bond for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Milford Marr shot. And the Blue Jays are working around on offense, getting the dark jerseys. They have the lead 2-0 with 3:50 left here in the first quarter of play from their home field. But they only get home field advantage by virtue of being a predetermined site. But a good number of Maryland fans here may almost be close to 50-50 the way we survey the crowd. Fans making the trip up from College Park.
The irony of the situation last year, Hopkins had to go down to Byrd Stadium as the higher seed to play Maryland. And this year the NCAA returns the favor.
Billy Evans with the shot, and denying that near post was Brian Doherty.
You must take smart shots against Doherty. You don't want to give him those kind of outside shots because I think he generally gets his momentum. And once he gets hot, he's very, very difficult to score on.
Brian, stat total has Hopkins. They've had the possession and the shot total lead as well. And the goal total, 2-0 the score. Andrew Godfrey behind the cage. Pat McGuire on him. Now Dave Marr for the Blue Jays. Dave LaChapelle has been on him, and Dave LaChapelle puts the pressure and now goes right to Brian Doherty. Now the Maryland Terrapins quickly come through midfield. Terrapins looking to create on the break. Maryland now will set things up. Shot taken. That one zings over the crossbars. Pat McGuire taking the shot.
Maryland had the numbers game right there. They had a 5-on-4 there. Didn't space particularly well, but they maintained possession.
Scott Hockstedt almost eludes pressure, but instead, David Livingston has to scoop it up. Hanna now for the Maryland Terrapins. Bob Hanna. They work it down to Mike Crawford. Crawford behind the cage. He has to deal with Aaron Van Horn. Crawford trying to come around the right side of the crease. Aaron Van Horn working hard. Crawford had the inside, takes the shot. We have a whistle. And did Crawford get the crease? Is that the call?
Crawford fell in the crease after his shot. The senior finished off the season with a good game against UMBC. He had 6 goals. He's got 13 on the season.
And Maryland 10-2 this year. Their only losses to UNC and UVA. Lost to Virginia, the team they would meet next week in the semifinals if they advanced. They lost to Virginia in the semifinals of the ACC tournament, played in Charlottesville. And the winner of this game plays next weekend against the Virginia Cavaliers. They beat Harvard earlier today, 23-20. Warner Kruger, now to Matt O'Kelly and the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays with 1:34 set up on offense at a 2-0 lead.
You can see the patience. They want to control the ball, make Maryland play defense. It's a lot more tiring to play defense than it is to play offense in this heat. That will pay off later in the game.
Kruger trying to feed Matt O'Kelly, but Dave Marr with the opportunistic stick to scoop it up and keep Johns Hopkins on the attack. There's a matchup we've seen this afternoon. Marr trying to work out Dave LaChapelle. Makes the feed to Dan Denahan, but it sails.
LaChapelle matches up so well against Dave Marr, because Marr's really a power dodger. He likes to lean in and bully you, and LaChapelle's very strong. So at that matchup, I don't think Marr's going to have much success getting around LaChapelle. Here it is again. These are just two pretty evenly matched guys. LaChapelle, watch his feet. He's in great position, leaning into Marr. That's ideal defense right there.
Midfield for Maryland, Evans, Raiden, and DeAndrea.
Maryland Terrapins. Tony DeAndrea now. Bring it forward for the Maryland Terrapins. Jay Penn is on him. Now Penn offers some pressure. DeAndrea. The deft stick work. He's back out to Frank Raiden. Raiden, part of that midfield unit, to Todd Evans. Evans looking for goal. That one just over the upper corner. Maryland will maintain possession, but a good-looking attempt from Todd Evans.
Evans had Marcus beat on that one, and Evans is so quick. Hopkins has got to put a long stick on Evans. There's no way that Penn and Hopkins' Evans, Dan Evans, can stay with Evans of Maryland.
Scott Hockstead trying to create something for the Maryland Terrapins. And this is Todd Evans. You mentioned his speed and creative. Look at the stick moving. Evans now, he is closed off. Puts it in the middle of Frank Raiden. He'll take the shot. Maryland will keep the possessions. Mike Crawford was back there for the Maryland Terrapins.
Again, Raiden and Evans up top with their quickness. They're getting open shots.
14 seconds left here in the first quarter of play. Crawford, will he go to goal? Trying to get on the inside. Aaron Van Hoort shielding him off. Peter Hillgardner. 2 seconds left. They're going to have to hurry. That's it. First quarter play in the books. I'm not sure Peter Hillgardner was aware of the time consideration. And the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, after 1 quarter of play, have the early 2-0 lead on the Maryland Terrapins. We're coming back with more quarterfinal play from Baltimore, Maryland. Legal procedure on the faceoff as we start the second half of play, the second quarter of play. Our score here, 2-0 in favor of the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Adam Bond and Warner Kruger, who was on the faceoff for Hopkins, with the goals, the difference in this contest. Dave Johnson, Quentin Kesnick, Maryland Terrapins in the white jerseys. Peter Hillgardner on the ball now for the Terrapins. Maryland trying to keep on the attack. Mike Crawford. Crawford.
Hopkins now switching into their zone defense. They'll play 3 primary defenses.
Feed in the middle, gets caught in traffic of big sticks. Gagliardi trying to bring it out for the Hopkins Blue Jays. Same with Aaron Van Horn. Maryland trying to keep the pressure on. The ball comes loose, and handling the skip was John Marcus. That was difficult to handle because he just saw a maze of sticks and suddenly a lacrosse ball coming right at him. Rob Dorr has trouble controlling it with the big stick. Hopkins desperately looking for an answer, and they find it in Andrew Godfrey. Now Godfrey getting the inside, makes the feed on the far side. Dan point blank, Doherty is saved. Now Evans, the follow-up, it's in the net. Adam Bond with his second goal of the afternoon.
What a fantastic flurry in front of the cage. The first shot by Denahan,
point blank,
beat Doherty, but hit the defenseman behind. Watch the defenseman slide into the cage for Maryland. I think you'll see Doherty challenge, and watch number 20 right there. Makes the save, the rebound, kicks out in front to to Bond, who then beats Doherty. Here it is again. Watch his first shot. Hits 20 for Maryland.
Graham Niemi.
The long stick midi hopping into the cage, and Bond is right there for his second goal.
Milford Marchant wins the faceoff through traffic, comes through, takes a shot, it's a goal! Milford Marchant on the faceoff. He's able to beat Chris Noe and score.
Speed kills, and you can see the speed of Milford Marchant. The Maryland defense trying to regroup. Brian Doherty not playing with the enthusiasm and emotion that we've seen him. But it's tough to play with that kind of spark when you're not making many saves. And right now,
well, we saw that. Look at Dick Adele. Certainly he has to be concerned on the steamy sideline. Another face-off situation coming up here, and we talked about this being critical. Working hard, Brian Haggerty, the freshman, on Warner Kruger. Niemi trying to come up with it, the big stick. He has trouble with it. Maryland still battling, but Hopkins wins. John Gagliardi, who likes to come forward, Now Kevin Kaiser and the Big Sticks getting the action. We're going to have a foul coming up on Maryland. Adam Bond with the feed. But a foul coming up on the Maryland Terrapins. It'll be an extra man opportunity for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. So things go from strength to strength as Mike Bonanni getting called with the infraction for the Maryland Terrapins. And he will be off the turf and an extra man.
Face-off, again, generating the possession for Hopkins, which generates the penalty. Kruger did a fantastic job on the far sideline, digging that ball out. Hopkins got the ball down low to Bond. Bonanni really not a fouling type defenseman. He only has 6 fouls on the season. But we'll get to see the extra man. Remember, Hopkins now, in the last 2 games versus Maryland, is 1 for 18 on extra man chances.
It's not been a strong point, but today is a different story. It's 4-0. Dan Denahan. Hopkins in the dark jerseys, they work it around. Challenge on the close defense now, the Maryland Terrapins and their goalie. Doherty, the feed inside to Collins, swings around, gets a shot off amidst 3 white jerseys from Maryland.
Shot out of bounds, Hopkins ball.
Hopkins, another chance. Low shot in traffic, Doherty trying to get a read on it. Look at the replay of the Dan Collins effort. It's Billy Evans taking the shot for the Blue Jays. Dave Marr now. Hopkins, Milford Marr shot, Dave Marr with the pass. Evans with the shot from the left side, the ricochet. Hopkins keeps the possession. They remain extra man up.
They've scored 20 extra man goals this season. 8 have come from Evans. He's number 28 on the far side. Keep your eye on him. He almost scores half of their extra man goals.
There he is right now. Let's see if it happens. He gives the feedback instead to Marshot. Nice ball movement. A crisp shot taken from the right side by Ed Zucchelli. But Brian Doherty equal to the task.
Zucchelli has been on fire. He's played very well lately, especially on the extra man.
Extra man close to
9 goals in the last 4 games for Zucchelli, but Doherty was there, not with the stick, but with the helmet.
Evans now, the Milford Marr shot. We're in the second quarter. Johns Hopkins with a 4-0 lead. Critical situation here for Maryland. Team's back at even strength with Hopkins with the possession. Evans stays with it for the Blue Jays. 12-17 left, second quarter. Andrew Godfrey. For Johns Hopkins, giving him a look is Frank Radin. Radin, the Maryland player, behind the cage. Godfrey now surveys. Everyone just about still right now on the field. Frank Radin gives Godfrey some space. Now Adam Bond. Dan Denahan comes right side. He's got to deal with the big stick defenseman, trying to feed it in tight. Brian Doherty comes out, the goalie for the Maryland Terrapins. And now in transition, the Terrapins trying to get something going. Graham Niemi coming forward, the big stick. A sea of big sticks up front for the Terrapins. Hilgardner behind the back, and a costly behind the back pass. The turnover for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, and they will have possession.
Not the time or place for the behind the back pass right there. That's a play you must make. Down 4-0. You're not going to get that many opportunities. Now Hopkins will possess.
Adam Bond in tight to Denahan. Doherty made the save. Dave Marr, though, the hustle, scooping up the ground ball. Blue Jays leader in that department. Warner Kruger has trouble with it. Niemi taking a couple swats. And now we've got a whistle.
It's going to be an interference call against Maryland. A little over-exuberance to take the body. You can't make contact with a player like that if you're more than 5 yards away from the ball.
Look at Eric Osberg of the Maryland Terrapins. Matt O'Kelly for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Blue Jays come on the attack. Warner Kruger. Osberg is on him for the Terrapins.
O'Kelly, and Kruger.
So Hopkins, they've been patient. It's worked this afternoon. And when Maryland has been on the attack, they've had the defensive answers. Ed Zucchelli now.
One of the keys to scoring against Doherty, you need to shoot from in front of the cage. He's an excellent goaltender when you're shooting from extreme angles because he's kind of big. He's about 6'1", 190 pounds, and he takes up a lot of the cage.
O'Kelly trying to go to work for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Makes the feed, too much spice on that one for Denahan. It was good defense on the part of John Miller for the Maryland Terrapins. And now Maryland, Matt Hahn, goal scorer, having trouble on the turf. Good defense on Aaron Van Horn's part, and it was Van Horn forcing the turnover. So credit the big stick defenseman staying stride for stride with Matt Hahn. 10:04 left, second quarter.
Van Horn doing a nice job there. I think a little of this situation is also Maryland's offensive players now have been watching a lot of this ball game. Hopkins has controlled it, so the tendency when you get the ball is to be over-aggressive and try to make plays instead of just relaxing and getting into your game.
Tim Colbert getting into the game for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, but a very good point is Hopkins overwhelmingly has had the possession in this game, partly because they're playing a very good half-field game. Godfrey gets the inside, but it's checked from behind by Paul Elfstrom. Now the battle to the far side. Johns Hopkins will have the possession.
Watch the defense for Maryland. Godfrey gets a step, but that's why these defensemen have the long stick, and Elfstrom using it right there. You got to protect your stick once you defeat that defenseman. Keep it in front of your face.
Milford Marchant, long pass to Dave Marr. Marchant at the top. Now Evans. Interception for the Maryland Terrapins. Good work on the part of Brian Reese, the big stick defenseman. Now Reese, again, it's tough to handle that big stick. He loses, and he can kick it. He's doing everything he can. Good hustle on the part of Brian Reese.
Illegal procedure against Maryland.
Illegal procedure.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Playing without his stick. Watch, this is Brad Berzins, who was just inserted in the game. D sticks Reese, and then Reese tries to play the ball. He knows he's been caught out of position. It's not a bad play. He kind of lucky he didn't get called for an intentional unsportsmanlike conduct right there. Take a look at his stat, though, in this quarter. Hopkins 8 shots, Maryland only 1.
The Brian stat tells the story so far here in the second quarters. Johns Hopkins so far have dictated this game, but it's a long way from over, and this rivalry always very intense and typically close scores. Milford Marchant works it on the wide side here. Back to Marchant.
You've got to wonder when defensively Maryland's got to come out of their shell a little and start to stretch their defense and play Hopkins, because if you're Johns Hopkins and Tony Seaman right now, you're content to use 3-4 minutes a possession.
9:23 left here in the second quarter. Marchant trying to go to goal, being shielded by Brian Reese. Loose ball to Dave Marr, feeds it now on the left side. It's a goal! It's in the net! Billy Evans with the goal.
Billy Evans from David Marr. Take a look at Doherty. This is a very fluky and garbage-like goal. You'll see it. Excellent defense up top. And the scoop is missed by LaChapelle. Rolls right to Marr, to Evans for the goal. You make that scoop, that play never happens. Marr is the leading ground ball player on Hopkins. And he's always there. Watch it right here. He missed the scoop. And who's waiting? David Marr for the assist. And again, Evans right in front of the cage. You need to generate shots in front of Doherty. Not from the sides, right in front of the cage.
Well, Marr had 51 ground balls coming into this contest. Haggerty against Kruger on the faceoff. Brian Haggerty using the freshman in against faceoffs here for the Maryland Terrapins. Now the Terrapins in transition with a chance. Mike Crawford will slow things down, allow the Terrapins to set up, but they trail 5-0. Can't slow things down too much. Crawford. Pete LeSueur is working on Crawford. Crawford gets the inside. Crawford takes it to goal. Aaron Van Horn, though, slid to help out. Now it's Van Horn on Crawford.
Livingston, Farmer, and Hannah.
Chris Farmer now for the Maryland Terrapins on the left side. Farmer trying to get the inside, trying to dodge around the defender. Farmer now comes in the middle, takes the shot. There will be possession once again as he was working very hard to get around Paul LeSueur.
And it looked like, again, he had Marcus beat. Marcus kind of went down low, and the shot came out high, but Maryland's missed a couple 10-yard shots.
They're going to have to start putting those away, down 5-0 here. Quarterfinal action. The whip, Andrew Whipple, as they call him, for the Maryland Terrapins. Terrapins now go on the attack. Chris Farmer from the midfield. Farmer now coming left side, takes the shot, trying to beat Marcus far post. It was loose in the crease, and we have a flag coming up.
It's going to be a late hit up high by Kaiser of Hopkins. After that shot by Farmer, he slid. He was the sliding defenseman helping out. And after the shot was released, he came in with the check. You'll often see that. Very similar to in football, a quarterback makes a pass and the lineman crunches him after the pass. Here it is. This is Farmer with the shot, and you can see number 10, Kaiser, coming in late. Marcus making that save.
All right, so Maryland now on the extra man. Extra man opportunity for the Maryland Terrapins, and they will try to take advantage of it, down 5-0. The point has been good on the special teams. He is about to receive the ball, Mario LaPointe. Chris Farmer now for the Maryland Terrapins. Behind the cage, Bill Gardner, they'll work it back out front. Farmer, he's going to crank right into the net, the pocket of John Marcus. And now the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, Jay Penn. Godfrey in tight quarters along the sideline. And it will be possession for...
Little debate on the near sideline.
Maryland, it's been whistled in Maryland's direction.
If you're a defensive-oriented person and you're playing extra man defense, this is the kind of shot you want to give the other team. And you'll see Marcus makes the big save against the Maryland
Dave
extra man.
Petramala is really complaining. What would he be complaining about? What's the debate here?
I thought that ball clearly hit the Maryland player, and then the Hopkins player hit it out of bounds. The referees debated right there. I think it was just leveraging the officials to try to get the call, but they made the right call here. This is Maryland's ball.
It is Maryland's ball. Again, they're still in the extra man. Kaiser is still out for the Maryland Terrapins. Mario LaPointe out. They're working on the right side. Matt Hahn. Back to LaPointe. Left side, Chris Farmer. Andrew Whipple right in front of the crease. The feed made, but the check now. Mike Crawford trying to get the loose ball. Crawford was right at the top of the crease. Now Gagliardi. He has elusive moves. He may have a big stick, but he has offensive-like moves from his defensive position. And now Milford Marchant. His specialty is speed. Marchant is forced to the outside.
John Marcus taking a page out of Brian Doherty's book, coming out of the cage to make the check. Real smart, exceptional play by Marcus. Really a very conservative goalie generally. He likes to stay in his crease. He seldom roams from the net.
Ellie Evans roaming on the left side for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. They have the lead 5-0. Now teams at even strength. We should point that out. Penalty assist to Kevin Kaiser is over. Bob Hanna marking Billy Evans. Now, Adam Bond for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Niemi trying to force him to the outside. They're working behind the cage to Andrew Crawford. Andrew Godfrey.
If you're Hopkins right now, the matchups you want are Godfrey or Evans. Billy Evans right now is being covered by a short stick. Those are the two players that you want to penetrate.
Dave Marr. Dave LaChapelle, say that fast. He was able to quickly, though, handle Dave Marr. Forces him to give it up to Billy Evans. 4:11 left in the first half of play. 5-0. Johns Hopkins, the team in the dark jerseys, with the lead. Evans will take the shot in traffic, ricochets. Marchant the follow-up, just wide right.
Shot out of bounds to Hopkins.
Marchant right-handed can really let it fly. Last week had 4. Left-handed, he generally shoots low. Right-handed, he just sails it. I don't even think he aims, he just blasts it. It either hits you, goes in, or goes wide.
Andrew Godfrey now for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, trying to get the inside. Paul Elfstrom working on him, but the shot by Godfrey is good. Andrew Godfrey finds a way.
Godfrey's coming on, only a sophomore, 8 goals on this season. He's a good shooter though, about 30%, and the key to this shot is the jump shot. Very deceptive when a player jumps high into the air and then fires the ball low. Here it is. This is a textbook roll dodge right here. Godfrey, jump shot, beats Doherty between the legs, and I think that's one that Doherty thinks that he should save. You watch his reaction afterwards, he realizes he should have had that one.
Paul Elfstrom was right in his face, and you mentioned the jump was the key to that goal. On the face-off, Hopkins wins it. Again, it was Warner Kruger against the freshman Brian Haggerty. Gagliardi brings it up for the Hopkins Blue Jays. Gagliardi's a midfielder at heart.
Gagliardi had some success in the preseason scoring goals, and since then he's just intent on taking the ball down the field and scoring. He's only he's got a couple assists, but he hasn't scored during the regular season. He's got to watch his fatigue level in a game like this. He ends up taking those long runs up and down.
And he's a close defenseman. Matt O'Kelly for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, now to Warner Kruger, a 6-0 lead. So a dramatic start here at Homewood Field for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. And Maryland won the regular season meeting 12-9. Maryland, the number 2 seed in this tournament. Hopkins, the 7th seed, a team that, amazingly enough, was almost borderline getting into the tournament. I mean, clearly when they won their last game against Loyola at 6-5, but they very easily could have lost that game, been 5-6. So it was that type of a tense season for Johns Hopkins.
They changed their strategy late in the season as far as practice preparation and as far as going to the ball control offense. And it's paid
Warner
off.
Kruger, it pays off. Warner Kruger. Now he had 4 goals entering today's contest. He has 2 today.
Werner Kruger, more than on the field as a faceoff man and his goal scorer, is really the leader of this team. He's the captain. Take a look, he's very quick, and he beats Doherty with the high shot. Werner Kruger, only about 5'7", built like a real short, squatty guy with great strength. Look at that, beating Doherty high. A lot of excitement. The Blue Jays playing with more emotion than we've seen in the past.
And Milford Marchant wins the faceoff, so that's going to be a problem for the Maryland Terrapins. Kevin Pasqualini was on the faceoff there, his first try against Marchant. Now Marchant going to work. He wants to take a shot. That one skims wide right, but Hopkins had it covered at the back. 2.5 minutes left here in the first half. A 7-0 lead for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, and we have an injured player. Milford Marchant. Not sure if he was injured, but they were tending to him.
Got a little double team action. Doherty coming out of the net now to double team Marr in the corner.
Marchant goes out, he had a face mask problem. Dave Marr will be double teamed in the corner by the Maryland Terrapins. Doherty was helping out on the double team. Now he's got to get back in the cage. He does, and takes the save on the Billy Evans shot. So Doherty helping out on defense. Andrew Whipple handles the stick check by Brian Kuzma. Now Whipple in transition for the Maryland Terrapins. They're down 7-0, but Godfrey stick checks from behind. And now the battle, all-important battle for the ground ball. And Kuzma wins it with the big stick.
Less than 2 minutes remaining in the half. Less than 2 minutes.
Whipple, though, knocks it down for the Maryland Terrapins. Now Maryland. Mike Crawford on the attack. Winds up. Hopkins will have possession.
Bounce to Hopkins.
That, I think, is an example Maryland wants so badly to get back in the game. You could tell when Crawford got it, he says, I've got to get a goal.
That's not the typical Maryland squad. Crawford's got to settle that one and work for a quality shot.
Billy Evans now working for a quality shot. He's got some room to work. Comes right through, but in traffic, the Maryland close defense is too close. And now, John Miller coming forward for the Maryland Terrapins. Miller's going to take the shot. And again,
Shot out of bounds.
this time Maryland will have possession.
Looked like Marcus might have gotten a piece of that last one.
Midfield for Hopkins. 10, Dorr, and Evans.
Substitutions are made. You know Maryland desperately wants to at least get on the board here in the final minute 19 of this first half of play from Homewood Field. The winner goes to the semifinals. Tony DeAndrea for the Terrapins. Todd Evans. Evans, he can get a shot off. He's got the quick release. Shielded nicely, though, by the Johns Hopkins defense. They're working behind the cage. Scott Hochstedt comes around. It sails. But Matt Hahn got back there for the Maryland Terrapins to make sure Maryland maintained possession. There's a look at Hochstedt.
Hochstedt, only a freshman, certainly not playing like one. 12 goals on the season, and he goes to the goal hard. He puts his head down, and he just barrels to the cage. Very tough to cover.
Barreling right now is Matt Hahn. He hit this feed, sails over Tony DeAndrea, and it will be Hopkins with possession. 7-0 the score. Awaiting moments here in the first half. 35 seconds left. Johns Hopkins will bring it from the back, but a near flawless first half for the Hopkins Blue Jays, and certainly Dick Adele will have some work cut out for him at halftime. This Maryland Terrapins team with a tremendous season and want it to continue. Tim Colbert continues forward for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Ed Zucchelli looks back at the clock, knowing the time is running out. 12 seconds left. Feet in traffic. Gotta be careful here. Trying to sweep it away, the Maryland Terrapins. Time is about to run out. It does. First half of play is in the books, and the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays have surged out to a 7-0 lead on the Maryland Terrapins. The Terrapins are second seed in the NCAA tournament, but this one far from over. A lot of time left in this competitive rivalry. Still another 30 minutes of lacrosse, but a packed house here at Homewood Field, at least on the Johns Hopkins side. They are pleased with what they see so far. We're coming back with our halftime. 7-0 is your score. Quick Kesnick, what do you think Dick Adell was telling his Maryland Terrapins team as the fans look on?
Starts with the little things. It starts with getting the ground balls, winning some face-offs, and playing some tough defense. They've got to start taking this game to Hopkins.
Well, Warner Kruger taking it right back to Maryland after winning the face-off against Brian Haggerty. And now Dan Dennehan for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Hopkins in the black jerseys in this very hot weather conditions against the Maryland Terrapins. Dan Dennehan. So Hopkins picks up where they left off, and you mentioned about time of possession. We had to estimate, it looked like they had about 2/3 of it in the first half.
Very frustrating for Maryland. Offensively, when you don't have the ball, then when you do get it, you tend to press. And we saw that in the late stages of the second quarter.
And that pressing will probably continue because down 7-0, everyone wants to make something happen on the Maryland Terrapins side. Dan Dennehan makes the feed in tight, but Brian Doherty scoops up in traffic. Now he's got pressure from Dave Marr. Maryland Terrapins, Pat McGuire trying to get it to midfield. He's in traffic. Haggerty loses it out of his stick. Knocked back into Maryland's half of field. Haggerty again for the Maryland Terrapins. Lobs it ahead from Matt Hahn. Aaron Van Horn is in his face, and Jonathan Marcus controls. Out to Billy Evans. Evans deeks, turns in the middle. Really working hard for Maryland. Scott Hochstedt trying to win the ball from Evans, but Evans continues to go forward. Now Todd Evans is on him. The battle of Evans. Now Milford Marchant will settle things down for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Graham Nemi is on him. Now again, Hopkins can be patient, set up in their offense, which they've exhibited all day.
They have, and they've exhibited that trait over the past 3 or 4 weeks, and it's really worked for them.
Adam Bond's open, takes the shot. Cage moves around. Doherty appeared to have the near post covered. Now the battle for the ground ball. Good hustle on the part of Maryland's Brian Reese as he was racing for it. In fact, almost ended up crashing through his own bench as Dan Dennehan was also in pursuit. The Johns Hopkins with the possession.
That was a real important save for Brian Doherty to make that first save of the second half after having a subpar first half. If he turns it on here, he's capable of shutting out Hopkins for the remainder of this game.
Then it's up to the Maryland offense, as we heard Brian Doherty talk about earlier in this game, saying that everyone talks about the focus on him, but the Maryland team needs to score, and they certainly do now, but they can't with Hopkins in possession of the ball. So behind the cage, the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays go to work with Dave Marr. Right, correction, Warner Kruger.
Hang on him, Oz.
Kruger to Adam Bond, back to Zucchelli now. Hopkins Blue Jays. Zucchelli surveys, he was under pressure. Kruger can't scoop it up. Now the Maryland Terrapins on the counterattack. Eric Osborne. Osborne still going. Feeds back in the middle. But unable to get a clear shot off with Scott Hochstedt. Hopkins doing well to control things from the back. Ryan Kuzma. A long pass, good vision on his part to Todd Carney. Another big stick. Coming upfield, he's going to take the shot. Doherty makes the save. Now we have whistles. The infraction against the Maryland Terrapins.
I think it's an interference call. Hopkins defense just doing such a fantastic job. Watch Carney with this shot. Doherty's going to eat this one up 9 times out of 10. Gets down low and smothers it. Sometimes it's difficult to pick up that ball as it comes out of those long sticks. Getting back to my previous point, the Hopkins defense, you can see Van Horn, Kuzma, and Gagliardi really swarming. They seem to have superior quickness. They're well rested, certainly. They haven't had to play much defense. And Kuzma handled the ball so well with that crossfield pass.
Amazing pass of about 40 yards in nature or in distance. Andrew Godfrey on the right side for the Hopkins Blue Jays. He goes behind the cage. Miller is on him. John Miller for the Maryland Terrapins. Adam Bond. Bond now. Looking to go 1v1. He stays behind the cage. At times, we've seen this where Hopkins, it doesn't even look like anyone's moving other than the player with the ball.
Yeah, they're just taking the air out of the ball. Certainly, Maryland has got to step up, start applying some pressure. You might get beat occasionally, but you need to generate some transition and some opportunities.
Maryland Terrapins trying to do just that. And John Miller doing the extra work for the Maryland Terrapins.
That's a great play right there. That's exactly what they need to do. Step out, play the man. If you get beat, so what? You've got help inside. You cannot afford to let Hopkins reel off 2- and 3-minute possessions every time down the field.
Now the Maryland Terrapins look to come the other way. Andrew Whipple. Certainly they need to get anyone involved in the attack at this point. Tony DeAndrea. Jay Penn is on him for Johns Hopkins. DeAndrea works it back out. Todd Evans. Evans directs traffic. Evans moved on by Rob Dorr. Evans on the dodge. Now coming in close. Is shielded back. Feed across the middle. Work on the part of the Maryland Terrapins, Frank Radin. Control it back from Maryland, but he is under defensive pressure. Radin's going to take the shot. That sails Whipple. Has it in the pocket of his stick. Gagliardi, he's going to get called. And the Hopkins bench is leaping in protest. Gagliardi getting called for the slash.
Referee right there to make the call. Certainly you could hear it from up here. He did hit him in the mask. You'll see he hits him in the mask and the stick right there. The key to Gagliardi defensively, he's got great timing. When the player gets in that motion with the stick going back and forth, he times it so he makes the check when the stick is in the forward motion. And it's all just a pattern. When you're playing against him, you got to change directions, you got to change your pacing and your tempo.
Bob Hanna to put it in play now for the Maryland Terrapins. Extra man situation. Down 7-0. Terrapins, Bob Hanna. Hanna, middle of your screen. Chris Farmer. Back to Hanna. Mike Crawford to work behind the cage. Maury LaPointe comes on in the extra man situations for the Maryland Terrapins. Andrew Whipple back to Chris Farmer. Taking the low shot, it's in the net, a goal, Bob Hanna. And Maryland is on the board.
Bob Hanna, the lefty, breaks the ice. Marcus gives up his first goal. It looked like he got a piece of it with his foot. Hanna, 8 goals on the season. Beats Marcus with the extra man. That was really a must-score situation. Here it is again from up top from about 14 yards. You'll see Marcus gets a foot on that. You can see the way he deflects it. Here it is again. You get the ISO shot. Didn't get his stick down quite low enough, and Hanna scores the extra man goal. Really big, big goal. Here it is again from behind the cage. Hanna from about 14 yards.
On the face-off, legal procedure called against the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Pat McGuire is facing off for the Maryland Terrapins. Now the Terrapins come on the attack. Andrew Whipple. Whipple being checked there by Brian Kuzma. Whipple. He's trying to work off a pick. Now Whipple's got pressure from behind. Puts it out to Mike Crawford for the Maryland Terrapins. 7-1 the score, 9 minutes left, third quarter. Now Maryland has a chance to set up an offense. It was critical to get possession after that face-off, and they did on the illegal procedure call. So Maryland trying to create some momentum. Frank Radin. Radin looks like he wants to take a shot. He does. That sails. Hopkins will have possession. No one was covering behind the cage for Maryland.
Radin so tough to cover one-on-one. He's got great quickness, 10 goals on the season, had 3 against Hopkins last time.
On the pressure now, Maryland. Matt Hahn trying to create. Marcus swinging at him. Hahn kicks it.
That's the second time we've seen Maryland players de-sticked. You got to get a bungee cord out there if you're playing against the Hopkins defense today. That just shows you the physical intensity. I mean, for a guy to knock the stick out of your hands, you know he's coming with some force behind that check.
Look at Dick Adele, the head coach of the Maryland Terrapins, trying to engineer the rally here with his team down by 6 goals. Marcus takes a venture out of goal. Gagliardi now, Hopkins Blue Jays trying to get through in transition. Warner Kruger. Kruger, though, immediately double team Milford Marchand. Trying to lose the challenge by Bonanni. He does. He takes the shot. Doherty to save. Marchand just had a step on Mike Bonanni and then was able to get a shot off. Now the Maryland Terrapins in transition, but Miller gets it stick checked away by a hustling Milford Marchand. Marchand will find pressure from Pat McGuire. That pressure by McGuire forces an errant pass, but Adam Bond collects. Andrew Godfrey, good shot. Maryland will have possession. But that was an amazing recovery on the part of Hopkins even to get a shot off.
A little too helter-skelter right there. Hopkins has got to stay within their game plan.
For Maryland,
Marchand took that initial shot. Doherty's going to gobble that one up all the time. He made up for it by getting the ball back, but you want to control the ball this time in the game. Got to be getting a little tired due to the heat. Kill the clock. They're playing against the clock right now.
That's a very good point, because now third quarter, 7.5 minutes left. Hopkins with a 7-1 lead. They have a very good defense and a goalie who has been very equal to the task late in the season, especially last week against Notre Dame. Maryland Terrapins trying to come on the attack, come quickly. Shot taken, but the save made. Shot taken by Maryland's David Livingston. Maryland, though, with the pressure, and this is what they need at this juncture. Peter Hillgardner providing that pressure. Now the feed, pass back to Matt Hahn. That's the stick they wanted it in, but it sails. Chris Farmer immediately gave it back to Matt Hahn. And that's what they want. They want to set up Matt Hahn.
They get this second chance opportunity off the failed clear. This is a great pass to Hahn, who has not shot the ball very much, and he had Marcus burnt out of his, you know what, down low.
Crease, yes.
Exactly, down low, and the ball sails over the cage.
Tim Colbert now trying to get through, but traffic, and Brian Reese coming up with the steal, and now the big stick for Maryland, Paul Elfstrom, getting it forward to Hillgardner, but he is immediately double teamed by Colbert and Aaron Van Horn. Colbert staying with him. Peter Hillgardner, bothered by a shoulder injury, finally evades the coverage, and now Maryland has a chance to set up with 6.5 minutes left in the third quarter. Hillgardner looking to go 1v1, trying to get on the inside, double team now. Gagliardi, the big stick, picking up. Looking for Hahn, can't get the feed. Alertly, Livingston tries to create the, scoop up the ground ball. Now Matt Hahn keeping it alive for the Maryland Terrapins. Chris Farmer now. Coming on now for the Maryland Terrapins. Bill Rule gets around Marchand, takes a shot, it's in the net. It's in the net. For Bill Rule, a goal, and it's 7-2.
Coach Adele rotating some fresh players into the game, and I think it paid off in that last sequence. Rule has not seen much action. Livingston hasn't seen much action, and yet those two players, you can see, had a little spark. Watch Marchand with this one-handed defense. Could have been a hold right there. Rule runs right through it, and that ball hit the corner, right at the intersection of the bottom and the pipe. Beautiful accuracy on that shot. You can see Marchand looks a little tired there defensively.
Maryland is outscoring Hopkins 2-0 here in the second half. It is Pat McGuire against Warner Kruger, but so hard to beat Warner Kruger. He puts it back to his goalie, Jonathan Marcus. Now Johns Hopkins is going to have to hurry to get it upfield. They have 10 seconds now to get it in the attack zone. Matt O'Kelly. And they're there. Hopkins probably wants to settle things down just a bit. Some helter-skelter play, and they've yielded the 2 goals here in the third quarter. Matt O'Kelly sets up behind the cage to the right.
Midfield for
As you
Hopkins.
point out, Maryland may have to come out and pressure these players, as they have had with some success. Warner Kruger. Pat McGuire is on him for the Maryland Terrapins. Johns Hopkins in the dark jerseys, Maryland in the white jerseys. Dave Johnson, Quentin Kesenick, Homewood Field, Johns Hopkins University. Predetermined site for this quarterfinal game. The winner plays Virginia next week in the semifinals. Adam Bond for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Bond looking to feed. Now Dave Marr. Dave Marr really being worked over this game by Dave LaChapelle. Out to Dan Denahan, though. Finds a way to get it to Denahan. He's going to take the shot. That skims on the turf. Johns Hopkins with the possession.
LaChapelle, again, doing a fine job against Marr. Marr leaning in, LaChapelle getting the ball on the turf, but Marr puts himself in a position to scoop up his own fumble.
He's, as we point out, leading the team in ground balls. He's come up with some big ground balls this afternoon for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, but that matchup continues one-on-one. Dave Marr sails one now. Billy Evans. Graham Nemi. Evans getting around Nemi. We have a whistle.
Evans withholding the ball. Referee right there said he put the ball and the head of the stick against his chest.
Yep. Now in transition, Maryland Terrapins try to break free. Behind the cage, out front, Todd Evans. Evans on the fumble, but now he recovers.
Could have been a hold right there. Rule runs right through it, and that ball hit the corner, right at the intersection of the bottom and the pipe. Beautiful accuracy on that shot. You can see Marchant looked a little tired there defensively.
Maryland is outscoring Hopkins 2-0 here in the second half. It is Pat McGuire against Warner Kruger, but so hard to beat Warner Kruger. He puts it back to his goalie, Jonathan Marcus. Now Johns Hopkins is going to have to hurry to get it upfield. They have 10 seconds now to get it in the attack zone. Matt O'Kelly. And they're there. Hopkins probably wants to settle things down just a bit. Some helter-skelter play, and they've yielded the 2 goals here in the third quarter. Matt O'Kelly sets up behind the cage to the right.
Midfield for
As you put on, Maryland may have to come out and
O'Kelly.
pressure these players, as they have had with some success. Warner Kruger. Pat McGuire is on him for the Maryland Terrapins. Johns Hopkins in the dark jerseys, Maryland in the white jerseys. Dave Johnson, Quentin Kesenick, Homewood Field, Johns Hopkins University. Predetermined site for this quarterfinal game. The winner plays Virginia next week in the semifinals. Adam Bond for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Bond looking to feed. Now Dave Marr. Dave Marr really being worked over this game by Dave LaChapelle. Out to Dan Denahan, though. Finds a way to get it to Denahan. He's going to take the shot. That skims on the turf. Johns Hopkins with the possession.
LaChapelle, again, doing a fine job against Marr. Marr leaning in, LaChapelle getting the ball on the turf, but Marr puts himself in a position to scoop up his own fumble.
He's, as we point out, leading the team in ground balls. He's come up with some big ground balls this afternoon for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, but that matchup continues one-on-one. Dave Marr sails one now. Billy Evans. Graham Nemi. Evans getting around Nemi. We have a whistle.
Evans withholding the ball. Referee right there said he put the ball and the head of the stick against his chest.
Yep. Now in transition, Maryland Terrapins try to break free. Behind the cage, out front, Todd Evans. Evans on the fumble, but now he recovers. Dan Evans was taking some swipes at him. A number of Evans represented today.
Referee's timeout. Billy Evans lost his glove. There was no advantage. That's why the referee was waiting for a settled situation to blow his whistle.
Otherwise, you'd have players throwing off their equipment as they go to goal. Todd Evans now for the Maryland Terrapins. Aaron Van Horn, those defensemen, close defensemen for Johns Hopkins. Just really making it hard for Maryland to create any space, really. Frank Raden, into the net! Into the net, a goal, Maryland! And the rally continues for the Terrapins here in the third quarter.
The tide is turning. Frank Raden was making a career out of scoring goals against Johns Hopkins. As I said, 10 goals on the season. This is his 4th against Johns Hopkins, just with a lot of quickness and speed, taking it right down the heart of the Hopkins defense. Look at that right back. He blows by Evans and beats Marcus, who seems not as sharp here in the second half as he did in the first half.
And look who the goal scorers are for Maryland today. Bob Hanna, Bill Rule, and now Frank Raden. And now Brian Haggerty wins a faceoff against Warner Kruger. Here comes Haggerty. They try to quickly get it back in transition. They were trying to get it to Maury LaPointe. Maryland Terrapins maintain possession, though, so Scott Hochstedt now behind the cage. Hochstedt has to deal with Brian Kuzma. That's a lot to deal with. Hochstedt working hard. Hochstedt with the feet in the middle. He cannot connect. Now Maryland trying to keep it in play. Keep it in their half of the field. Maryland Terrapins, Bill Rule. Second goal today for the Terrapins. LeSueur is on him for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. 7-3 our score. 3 unanswered goals by the Maryland Terrapins, the second seed in this tournament. Now trying to mount the comeback. Peter Hillgardner trying to work on Aaron Van Horn. Trying to pressure on Van Horn. He takes the shot. Maury Lapointe was back there to make sure it was covered for Maryland, so they'll keep the possession. But Hillgardner really being pushed off by Van Horn.
Yeah, that's a nice matchup. Hillgardner just likes to back in, turn and shoot. And Van Horn, one of the stronger defensemen in Division I lacrosse, just refusing to give in.
Speaking of turning and shooting, Bill Rule did just that. Maryland will have the possession. 2.5 minutes. Look at the shots this quarter. It's been Maryland's quarter after trailing 7-0 at the break. Todd Evans, Chris Farmer, right side. Behind the cage now to Maury Lapointe.
Hopkins now in their zone defense.
Scott Hochstedt out to Todd Evans. You see the zone, oh. Forces Maryland to survey things. Hillgardner, looked like he was surprised there for a second, and once again, he tries to go to work. LeSueur doing a nice job. They try to put it into the middle, but again, the zone clogging things. Zone by the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Todd Evans now for the Maryland Terrapins. Maryland, though, patient. Hillgardner. Again, they're shielding Hillgardner. Trying to feed a cutting Chris Farmer in traffic. Now Maryland putting the pressure on, trying to avoid a clear by Johns Hopkins, but the Blue Jays able to clear it up, trying to get it to Adam Bond at midfield. Takes a wild skip. Now Maryland, Todd Evans, somehow keeping it in play. Amazing stick work. Gagliardi getting his big stick in there for Johns Hopkins. Now a battle for the ground ball. Evans scoops it ahead to Maury Lapointe. We've got whistles.
That's a time violation against Maryland.
Right.
You really got to credit the scrappiness of John Gagliardi roaming to the midfield line, throwing some big-time lumber.
Again, Maryland had 10 seconds to get it into the attack zone, and because of the play at midfield, Johns Hopkins able to win the turnover. Warner Kruger now for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Minute 7 left here. Substitutions made. Andrew Godfrey.
1 minute remaining in the quarter, 1 minute.
For the Blue Jays, they lead 7-3. Critical point here for Maryland. They've got it within 4 goals. That would be something doable in the 4th quarter for the Terrapins. Still time here in the 3rd quarter for something to happen.
Hopkins wants to hold for the last shot. 40 to go here. No reason to turn it over.
We're going early here. We're going early.
Adam Bond, 30 seconds. Bill Rule working on him. Dave Marr. Marr trying to get in possession. See the time remaining. Marchand takes the shot. Now Doherty with 20 seconds. A long ball upfield, getting in position for it. Maryland Terrapins. Matt Hahn. Hahn trying to go to goal. He does. It's in the net. It's in the net. A goal, Maryland.
Nine seconds to go here in the quarter. And that's a nightmarish play for Hopkins. You take the bad shot, Doherty makes the long outlet pass, and Hahn shows his ability, catches it, and look at the speed of Matt Hahn. Just beating the Hopkins defense to the center of the field, tiptoes the crease. He did not step into the ball, cross the line. Watch it again. This is Hahn at the tail end. Look at the speed. Bursting to the cage, fakes Marcus High and lays it in down low. 7-4. What a crucial momentum goal that is.
With 9 seconds left, you said Johns Hopkins probably working for the last shot. They got a shot. Violation against Maryland, so Hopkins has the face-off. Now Hopkins there, well, they still may have a chance at the last shot. 2 seconds left. So we go into the 4th quarter with only a 3-goal difference after Hopkins had a 7-goal lead, and Dick Adell certainly has to be pleased with his Maryland Terrapins effort in the 3rd quarter. Our score, 7-4. Johns Hopkins with the lead.
Face-offs, and they're shooting. They're starting to shoot the ball well. They controlled the ball that quarter as opposed to the first half, and the momentum has swung a full 180 degrees in favor of the Maryland Terrapins.
Look at the Bryan stats and see if that bears out on the face-off. Kaiser, the big stick, trying to scoop it up for the Hopkins Blue Jays. He's going to run out of real estate, and possession will go to Maryland. So, technically Maryland didn't win the face-off. They get the possession.
Yeah, there was also some interesting substitution patterns late stages of that third quarter. It seemed like Maryland coach Dick Adell really playing a lot of different players. And for Hopkins, we've seen the same guys on the field all game. Seems like Werner Kruger and Marchant, they've been on the field an awful lot, and that's going to really hurt them in this 95-degree heat.
Maryland Terrapins now set up an offense again there in the white jerseys. Hillgardner to Frank Radin. Radin with a goal this afternoon. He sees a seam. He tries to take the shot. It's stick checked away by LeSueur. Matt Hahn trying to win the ground ball. They are important right now. Evans is in the middle. Instead, they'll bring it outside. Rule trying to get a shot off. He is harassed. Loose ball, Evans. Todd Evans will battle for it for the Maryland Terrapins. Terrapins starting to win the ground balls as well, something in the first half Hopkins controlled. Andrew Whipple for the Maryland Terrapins, just underway fourth quarter. Gets the feed to Hahn, but Hahn can't get the shot off. That close defense, though, we really must comment on how well they've done for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. But Maryland with more venom taking the shots. Whipple does, and Marcus with the save. And now, Gagliardi again. John Gagliardi coming forward, the big stick. He's going to take a shot. He does. He whiffs on it. Now, Ryan Doherty is out. Doherty lobs one forward. Maryland in transition. Peter Hillgardner. Hopkins trying to get back. Hillgardner to the feed, looking in the middle. Now Nemi just scoops it along the turf and almost scooped into the crease as Andrew Whipple and company were right in front, but we have an injured Maryland Terrapins player on the field. Is there a lot of activity in the chase for that ground ball?
Player down at, I think it might be Hahn. Actually, it's not Hahn or Hillgardner. It's one of the midfielders.
Hahn and Hillgardner tending to the injured player. Dick Adell certainly concerned. Maryland trying to come back on Johns Hopkins. We've got more coverage in Baltimore. Stay with us. As he worked with that big stick, and he was shaken up on the play, but he's okay as this large crowd looks on. And 7-4 our score. Maryland trailing Johns Hopkins, but as you pointed out in break, Quint Kessler, it's a tale of two halves right now.
Yeah, that's right. Hopkins was up 7-0 at halftime. Maryland outscored the Blue Jays 4-0 in that third quarter. So certainly Maryland, the team on the rise right now. Hopkins just trying to hold on.
And a flag has been thrown. Jonathan Marcus brings it out, the goalie for Hopkins. Nature of this flag clearly away from the play. Now pressure offered, and Tim Colbert, so Hopkins will keep possession. Fraction against Maryland. Billy Evans really sticking it to him. Maryland Terrapins working hard. Evans working hard for a shot. He takes it. Doherty gets a save. But now to try to sort out the nature of this flag.
Illegal procedure against Maryland. Take a look at Doherty. Pitched the shutout in the second half. Looked a little shaky early on, but as a quality goaltender, one of the best in the country and one of the best in the history of the Maryland program, he's really regained his composure, and he's seeing the ball so well. You can see right there that Billy Evans shot's moving, and Doherty snags it easily. He's playing with a little flair, it seems, in the second half. He's working the crowd. He's working his teammates. This is the real Doc.
Amazing Evans got that shot off. There's John Miller taking a swipe at Billy Evans. Milford Marchant. So now extra man for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Billy Evans. Dan Denahan. Marchant. Johns Hopkins in the dark jerseys with the lead, and right now man up. Taking the shot, Billy Evans. Doherty is there. Evans is absolutely harassed, and now Dave LaChapelle is able to clear it forward for the Maryland Terrapins. The Terrapins quickly on the break. Matt Hunt has a chance. It's in the net. It's in the net. A goal, Maryland.
Hahn on the textbook fast break, and this was all triggered with the big Doherty save, and the penalty was released, and Radin broke over the midfield line. They popped the player out of the penalty box, and Maryland had a 4-on-3 break, and they capitalized. Watch it, here it is. Whipple down low to Hahn, and this is what makes him so tough. Straight overhand, beats Marcus to the far side, 7-5. Maryland has countered with 5 straight goals.
And now what was a 7-goal game at halftime is now a 2-goal game with 12 minutes left here in the fourth quarter. Face-off so important. Haggerty against Warner Kruger. The battle for the ground ball. Maryland feverishly going after it. Hopkins is able to control. Marcus. Now he's going to lob it upfield, looking for Warner Kruger. And Kruger ignites the Hopkins Blue Jays attack. Kruger looking for space and a goal! Johns Hopkins answers. And Kruger, a hat trick this afternoon.
He has got Doherty's number, certainly. Werner Kruger doing something right, shooting the ball. Again, the shot came from right in front of the cage. So important to have a good angle when you shoot against Doherty. Look at the quickness of Kruger. Beats Whipple, who got caught playing defense, usually an attackman. Here it is again. Marcus with a beautiful outlet pass. And then it is all Kruger from there. A little change of direction. And watch him stop on a dime right there. And the lefty shot. Doherty really didn't see that one, sprawling to the turf.
Marchand winning the face-off against Pasqualini for Maryland. So now Hopkins a 3-goal lead in the all-important possession. Marchand gets the defender down, back out front to Denahan. Ryan Reese had stumbled trying to cover the very elusive Milford Marchand. Andrew Godfrey now for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. You mentioned about Andrew Whipple getting caught back. A number of big sticks were working forward, trying to help Maryland secure possession, and in the transition, Whipple had to drop back. Adam Bond. Livingston is on him, so that's a matchup Adam Bond wants. Adam Bond continuing to work. Kevin Pasqualini actually working on Adam Bond. Bond evades him, but then on the slide, some help out from Paul Elfstrom. Denahan, he was open for a moment. Denahan denied by Bonanni. So Denahan will patiently bring it behind the cage. Mike Bonanni poking at him, prying. 10.5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And the shot, particularly the blind stat, favors Hopkins. Denahan in traffic. Now skimming here to the sideline. Evans racing. He just wants to win possession. Has to be the first to the ball.
Nice play by Evans, shielding off
Brian
Reese right there, just establishing his position. The only way Reese would get that is if he pushed Evans. Again, Hopkins now possessing the ball like they did in the first half. They kind of got away from that in the third quarter. They played too much defense. It seems like whoever has been able to possess the ball is eventually going to get the goals. You can see fatigue setting in. That's Coach Seaman on the sideline. He's a terrific underdog coach. When Tony Seaman comes into a game as the underdog, he does something, I don't know whether it's his preparation or little gimmicky things, but he's always so solid as an underdog coach. He can pull off the upset.
Well, Hopkins the 7th seed, Maryland the 2nd seed, and Tony Seaman trying to play out the underdog role. This is Warner Kruger, who really has, in a lot of categories, he was very dominant on the faceoffs in the first half. Kruger wants his 4th goal of the afternoon. We have a flag. So Kruger unable to get the goal, but able to draw the penalty.
The quickness of Kruger forces you into matchup problems. That's going to be a holding violation.
Technical foul.
You can see Kruger looking kind of tired as he jogs over to the bench.
Well, he should be.
What a warrior. He's been on the field.
This will be a 30-second extra man advantage for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. 9:42 left here in the fourth quarter. Maryland needs to kill off the extra man here. They've done wonders, outscoring Hopkins 5-1, but still down by 3 goals. Outscoring them 5-1 here in the second half.
2 key players here would be David Marr with the ball and Billy Evans shooting the ball. As I mentioned earlier, Evans has 8 out of the 20 Hopkins extra man goals. Denahan has 5 out of those 20. So those are really the primary 3 players.
All right, Evans would be in the far corner on your screen, left side. Evans now with the ball. He's being forced out to the outside. It's Kelly, now Dave Marr. Marr looking to feed through traffic. Marchand trying to scoop it up. Cranking. Zucchelli. Doherty makes the save. There's Marr. Doherty again.
That was
But
a
Marr,
monster save.
I don't believe how he made that.
I don't believe how I could see maybe making it in a wildest dream, but to catch that shot is unbelievable. Here it is. This is a first shot. Had a little problems with it, and watch Marr fake him once, and it looks like he's got him burnt, and yet he hangs with it, and he extends his stick out like that. Great body control, and Marr is dumped into the turf, so Hopkins maintains possession. But that's such a huge save with a 3-goal margin right here. Maryland comes back to win the ball game. That save right there is the key play of the game.
Was this game saver? Dave Marr now for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. Under 9 minutes left, fourth quarter. Teams are at even strength. Adam Bond for the Blue Jays. Frank Radin going to give him a couple swats. Adam Bond now. Billy Evans forced back into midfield. And Maryland is able to win it. Paul Elfstrom, the big stick defenseman, working hard to create the turnover.
That was such a great check with the butt end. He reached over the shoulder of Evans with the butt end to D-ball the stick. It was just beautiful the way he reached over. A lot of times if you go two hands, you end up pushing the player from behind. So you extend with one hand. Really nicely done.
Able to listen it from Billy Evans. Frank Radin now for the Maryland Terrapins. They go on the attack in the white jerseys, down by 3 goals in this NCAA quarterfinal from Homewood Field. Todd Evans looking to ignite something. Can get a bit of space. Evans shielding the ball. Trying to work off the stick. Takes the shot. It's in the net. A goal by Todd Evans. Somehow he's able to get around Rob Dorr, get the shot, get the goal.
Todd Evans. Beautiful move, circling in front. This is one Marcus was making. This was a save Marcus was making early on in the game. Here it is again. Evans so quick with a change of direction. Watch this bounce shot nestle right under the pipe. Perfect placement. Again, not the fastest shot, but perfect placement.
And he was really being harassed, as you see on the replay, by Rob Dorr.
Yeah, that was not bad defense. That was not bad defense. That's a shot that you're going to give up, and you hope your goalie can make the save. But Evans made the perfect shot.
Now Haggerty wins the face-off, but the Kruger opportunistically scoops it up from behind. Now checked away, and good work on the part of Maryland, Scott Hochstad. And Hochstad is put out of bounds by Warner Kruger from behind. And the flag, extra man opportunity now for the Maryland Terrapins.
Kruger takes a seat in the box.
30 seconds, advantage now for the Maryland Terrapins. Down by 2, 8-6 with 7:50 left here in this critical fourth quarter from Homewood Field.
So difficult in that situation to control yourself because you have a nice shot at the player if he turns. In that case, Hochstad really did a good job protecting his stick and keeping his back towards Kruger to make him hit him in the back. So it was a good draw of that foul by Hochstad, only a freshman.
Maryland Terrapins. Ball intended for Maury LaPointe. Rob Dorr intercepts the big stick, and now Johns Hopkins and Evans under pressure. And we have whistles. Timeout called by Hopkins. They were maybe going to be in a time-sensitive situation, trying to get it upfield into the attack zone, as Chris Farmer was really putting the pressure on. We've got a break here, but not much of a break for the players and coaches. We have an 8-6 game. Johns Hopkins leads. And some Maryland Terrapins try to continue their comeback. They trail the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays 8-6 after Hopkins led 7-0 at halftime. Hopkins get under pressure. They had the timeout. Milford Marchand's ball is going to sail out of play, and it'll be Maryland with the possession.
Nice job by Maryland. Marchand looking to run that ball out himself off the timeout, and then had to get the ball out of the defensive clearing zone, so he just launched it. A little confusion on the part of Hopkins, and that hurts, especially when you burn that timeout specifically to clear the ball. That's one that they might need later, that timeout.
Especially in this tight game. Frank Radin now for the Maryland Terrapins. Maury LaPointe on the left side. Pete LeSueur is marking him, watching him. LaPointe behind the cage. She mentioned Dick Adele using a number of different players in the second half. LaPointe now one-on-one. Will he go to goal? Instead, the feed. He'll go into the shot. Marcus, the save. Hopkins big sticks trying to clear Rob Dorr. Dorr, though, immediately crunched as Maryland tries to keep the pressure on. Hopkins, Gagliardi, the flamboyant big stick. Coming upfield. Nifty handoff to Dave Marr. Gagliardi, though, full marks.
Big time play right there for Gagliardi to split the two Maryland players, and Rob Dorr, only a freshman, number 24 for Hopkins, with the long stick. Both guys clearing the ball with some confidence. They can handle their sticks.
8-6 the score. Hopkins with the lead and possession. Andrew Godfrey behind the cage, trying to work on Bill Rule. Actually, he's working on Frank Radin. Adam Bond for the Blue Jays. Mario LaPointe giving him a look. Maryland in the white jerseys, Johns Hopkins in the dark. Adam Bond, now Andrew Godfrey. He's going to try to come around the crease. It got behind Doherty, but now Maryland will scoop it up, but they're under pressure to clear, and they're going to have 10 seconds to get out of their zone. All being checked around, and now we have a whistle.
Radin, yeah, it's going to be a push. Radin got dumped right there. Nice play by Radin. He wasn't pushed that hard, but anytime you feel pressure on your back in that situation, if you're not going to get the ball, you might as well fall, because you never know, you can get the call.
Todd Evans gets the ball. He snares it out of the air. Now under pressure, he brings it forward. David Livingston. Farmer here on the left wing.
Midfield for Maryland.
Farmer now.
Livingston, Farmer, and
To Peter
Evans.
Hillgardner. Hillgardner trying to work on Gagliardi. The close defenseman, the big stick. Hillgardner being pressured off, eludes the challenge, and scores the goal! Peter Hillgardner!
Hillgardner is the clutch performer on this Maryland team offensively. In the playoffs, he's just an outstanding scorer. Last year in the semis and the finals, 6 goals, 4 assists, and he shows up when this game is on the line. Right here, watch him. As I said earlier, he likes to lean in, turn to the cage, and shoot. Protects his stick so well, he rarely turns it over, and that's a huge goal for Peter Hillgardner. It's a 1-goal game. This one's going down to the wire, Dave.
You're not kidding, and we look at it again and talk about the wire. Living on a tight wire there to score that goal. Missed the last 3 games of the separated shoulder. Now in the face of Warner Kruger is able to win it. It goes back to Aaron Van Horn. 8-7. So from 7-0, Maryland has come back to pull within 1. And showing why they're the number 2 seed in this tournament. Ed Zucchelli with good vision to work it on the left side. Warner Kruger, he's been the spark plug this afternoon for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, not only on face-offs, where he's a specialist, but also with 3 goals. Now Kruger patiently surveys. Critical possession. 4.5 minutes left in the game. Kruger patient. Working on him, Brian Haggerty. Here comes Kruger. Flags. Extra man coming up. Brian Doherty in frustration. But Kruger drew the foul as he went to the crease. He got it from behind.
Watch the little change of direction. Kruger comes in, and he'll get hit up around the head area by Bonanni right there. Yep. The butt end in the head. Kruger gets spun to the turf. That is one tough character, Werner Kruger.
So Mike Bonanni going off. Werner Kruger taking the punishment. You know, it's the type of situation. Bonanni really had to get back on the slide and help out because Kruger was about to be one-on-one with the goaltender. And really, with only about 4 minutes left in the game, Maryland cannot have this a 2-goal game. They have to keep it a 1-goal game.
No, he's got to go there. It's just the way he does it. Kruger's a short player, and again, we see some tall defensemen having problems with shorter defensemen getting the stick up around the face mask area.
That's a good point. Johns Hopkins Blue Jays, Dave Marr. Milford Marchand on the extra man. Okay, now you were talking about on this, we look for Evans maybe to take the shot. He's got it right now.
Maryland very active with their extra man defense.
Marchand to Billy Evans. It's a goal. Milford Marchand.
That is a tremendous assist by Marchand with that seam pass right through the middle of the defense.
3:34 left in the game.
Evans one-on-one with Doherty after the sensational pass. Watch, Marchand finds Evans, zings it sidearm through the defense, and Evans makes it count in front. He gave Doherty that extra fake. Huge goal. There it is again. That pass had some mustard on it, folks. And Evans makes it count from the inside. We've seen Doherty make that kind of save, not on that last shot, though.
Now a scrum on the faceoff. Kuzma trying to win it for Johns Hopkins. They get possession. It was between Haggerty and Kruger, the faceoff. We got a flag coming up again on Maryland. So after the great comeback, things start to unravel for the Terrapins.
A little over-aggression on that loose ball. You can't fault the intention here with this check. It's just they got Dave Marr up around the rim of the face mask again. There's Coach Adele. Tough to make a comeback when you're down a man. Because now Hopkins will zing the ball around for another minute, shorten this game.
8-7 the score. With 3:18 left. And Hopkins with an extra man for the next minute. Correction, 9-7 the score. But that extra man situation, again, Hopkins in the previous meeting, Maryland wants a timeout.
Look at
Brian
shots
stats.
about even. Yeah, last time these two teams played, Maryland had over 50 shots. So the Hopkins ball control has done a good job. Look at saves. Doherty with a nice game, 19. And Marcus holding on after the great first half.
Yeah, shut him out in the first half. For a while, Brian Doherty had a shutout going here in the second half, but it's now yielded 2 goals. Dave LaChapelle was the guilty party. He is down for a minute, extra man down. Extra man opportunity, man down for Maryland. Billy Evans, who scored on the last extra man for Johns Hopkins. Could be the game right here, 9-7, 2:47 left in the game. Marr looking to feed right in the middle. But Dan Collins instead, the follow-up now taken on the left side. Hopkins will maintain possession as Billy Evans was going for 2 extra man goals in a row.
Not a bad shot right there. You know you have the backup, so you might as well shoot for the pipe. If it goes in, you're a big winner, and if it misses, your team still has possession.
Milford Marchant now. Ed Zucchelli. 2.5 minutes left. Hopkins patient. Drop a pin in this crowd right now. Marr trying to make the feed. He's denied by Brian Reese. Now Maryland, the all-important ground ball. They're under pressure. We have a whistle and a timeout called by Maryland.
We've seen some strange things happen. Last year during the regular season when these two teams met, Hopkins scored late in the game to win that one 16-15, and then as we know in the playoffs, Maryland turned that game around. So this has been just a fabulous series over the last 3 or 4 years. And over the last 99 years,
yeah.
Right. 1895.
Actually, when that series started, Maryland wasn't even the University of Maryland. It was Maryland School of Agriculture.
2 minutes remaining in the game.
Maryland right now trying to harvest a victory. Andrew Whipple. Under 2 minutes left. So Maryland will go to work. The Terrapins in the white jerseys, down by 2 goals. Hill Gardner with Jay Penn really working on him. Hill Gardner. Bounce pass out front. It's knocked away. Frank Radin was trying to get onto it in the Hopkins Blue Jays. Guess who has it? John Gagliardi. Seems like at critical stages he comes up with a big play. Now big stick Todd Carney loses it out of play. So Maryland with a minute and a half remaining. Maryland's trying to prevent it from being a minute and a half in their season. Johns Hopkins wants to continue the season.
Hopkins settling back in the zone defense. They're going to just collapse around John Marcus. Give Maryland the outside shot. Hopefully Marcus looking to make the big save. If you're Maryland, you got to start firing away.
Todd Evans having trouble as Carney gets in his way. Evans knows this is an important ground ball as he scoops it up. Evans trying to take it to goal. Loose in traffic, and Marcus. Now minute 8 left. Jay Penn for Hopkins. Timeout called, Blue Jays.
Nice timeout call right there. Penn was about to lose the ball, and Tony Seaman uses his last timeout, stays near the official on the sideline. It's always important to put yourself in a proximity where you can get the official's attention to make that timeout call.
Well, Brian Kuzma's on the ball. You mentioned Doherty does come out. They've got to clear. Gagliardi, he's the best stick handler of the big sticks. Now Hopkins, Milford Marchant, looking for Adam Bond, and they give it away. And Tony Seaman, the coach on the sidelines, just could not believe effectively Hopkins was in a position at that point, Quint, to just run out the clock.
That is such a tough pass to make. It's about a 60-yard pass with 48 seconds left to go in the game, and Tony Seaman has just got to be burned up inside about that. You work hard, Gagliardi with a beautiful clear, and then to toss that ball away is real frustrating.
Brian Doherty, the game clock you see on your screen. That's an ending in regulation. Maryland Terrapins. Peter Hillgardner now going to work. They need goals and they need them quick. Aaron Van Horn. Jay Penn now on Hillgardner. He makes the feed across the middle. Evans. But Evans can't get the shot off. Puts it on the ground for Matt Hahn. Hahn in traffic. Stick checked away by Aaron Van Horn. Now Todd Evans searching and probing for the Maryland Terrapins. They're going to have to hurry up and get another shot off. Calling for Whipple. Takes the shot. And with possession, Maryland. With 14 seconds left. Hopkins senses victory now. Frank Radin puts it in play. Trying to elude the defense. They work behind the cage. Hillgardner looking in the middle for Crawford, but it's cleared by Marcus, and that'll do it. Johns Hopkins, the Blue Jays, have advanced to the NCAA semifinals to take on the Virginia Cavaliers. Quint Keswick is heading downstairs for our post-game show. And what a dramatic victory for the Johns Hopkins Blue Jays. They hold off the Maryland Charge for a 9-7 win.